So I want to tell you what I feel about the Nigerian problems and Nigerian situation but before I do that, I just remembered one of my favorite first cousins. Is actually far older than me. Is probably like I guess up to 20 years older than I am. But sometimes we get along, sometimes we don't. But there's one thing that I like him for. When we do have conversations, he would say, "Well, okay, how do we position? Do we want to tell ourselves the truth, or do we want to just talk politics?" so so we have to agree on the mood, and then come into conversation. Sometimes things that we share, we have different opinions about, or opposing ideas. But so when we talk about Nigerian issues, I think one of the first things to agree upon is, do we want to tell ourselves the truth and prepare to handle it, or do we just want to talk? Okay. So essentially, and this is just my something I want to chip in the bigger conversations around not only the release of Nnamdi Kanu, or the call for protest on 20th of October, as initiated by Showore and many other people who are saying, release Nnamdi Kanu. So as I'm thinking about that on one hand, and then thinking about some of the expressed interest from countries like the US, who is beginning to call Nigeria to questions, to sort of slow down and look at these issues. And so thoughts came up for me around just the idea that it is better for us to own up that we have problems as a country in Nigeria. That we have problems of accepting the truth, owning the truth, and deciding to let the country work. And I think that one of the central ways that the country would work is first and foremost looking for ideas to equalize citizenship, equalization of citizenship. In Nigeria, citizens are not equal. Okay. Elements of unequal citizenship can be seen in ethnicism and or religion and all of that. And let me just make this case. Many of the excuse me elements in the 1999 Constitution, which is probably the supreme law of the land, were derived from military decrees. And these military decrees were made without a section of the country. The Southeast was already defeated in a war. We are not included per se in all the processes on equal ground. So there was this, if you like, defeatist mindset, and people who were craving for pardon and acceptance. And there was a superiority complex on the part of those who won, especially the North and the West, who were in alliance, and the Midwest, to overturn the Southeast. And I want to see there are some commonalities around the North and the West and the Midwest that is stark opposite of people in the Southeast. One of them is monarchical system of monarchical history and antecedents. All these other regions have kings. The Oba, the Emir, the Oba too. About Benin, for example, Obas in Lagos, emirs and sultans. They have these traditional systems that reflect their um, collectivist thinking, systems. In fact, in Nigeria, you would say the other tribes, the other the ethnic groups that won the war are mostly collectivist thinking cultures. The ethnic groups that lost the war, the Biafra region, are made up of people who are mostly individualistic thinking in their mindset and culture. So they are totally different people in their, in terms of orientation. Okay. So in the collectivist thinking cultures, you have people who are willing to have one person speak on their behalf. And they see the group first before. They see themselves first as members of a group before being individuals. It doesn't mean total absence of individualism. They do have that, but for the most part, it is okay for the Oba to speak on behalf of them. I mean, from ancestry, from history. But that's different. The Igbo man wants representation. Their culture, the Igbo culture, mostly resembles the practice of democracy, where each person is requiring or expecting to be represented. Each family sends a representative. There's consultative process, consultations that has to happen before any decision is taken. So Igbo, for example, is not a place where maybe one charity organization wants to come and set up a school and then the king gives the land. No. There are systems of ownership and representations that has to happen. So that's cultural to Igbos. But from what we know from history, in the West, they usually don't have that problem. The Oba can just maybe donate the land on behalf of the people, and they're okay with it. Okay, so you see that difference exists there. Okay, so now the collectivists after the war made military decrees. They were heading most of the militaries. And then these decrees later, and elements of the regional laws that were made when Nigeria was run in regions, okay, and they combined them, amplifying the interest of the regions that won the war, and made a constitution. Now, one of the bad aspects, one of the challenging aspects or relics of that process is the failure to recognize that by federalizing the country, by unifying the country into a federal system, Nigeria automatically agrees to rescind regional privileges, especially privileges that conflict with the national and federal privileges. One of those is monarchical privileges and religious privileges. When you nationalize or federalize a country, you abolish the regional system. You don't retain regional privileges, especially of the people that won the war. The regions that won the war try to retain privileges that were, of course, that were based in their regions, including even resources. They regionalized and kept the resources from their region intact, cultural systems from the region intact, powers of traditional institutions in their region, and the pattern is okay. The problem is that when you federalize the resources from the defunct eastern region, for example, the crude resources that was found in the east, former southeast region, is federalized. So from there, everybody gets allocation, and there is equality in the sense of how allocations are disbursed so that every part of Nigeria is taken care of. You see, the problem is doing that and refusing to grant equal citizenship. If you federalize it, you cannot regionalize citizenship. That means you cannot say that this person is from this region, therefore he should go back to his region. And on the same time, you want to retain privileges in your region but enjoy resources that are shared. That's one of the problems. But I mean, conversations can happen because, people who are more knowledgeable about these things can, but this is just me as a layman and, sharing my perspectives around how I see these things. The problem, the confusion, which is raised to power 7, is trying to retain privileges that were ancestral, that were historical privileges, okay, the legacies of the regional systems, into importing them and retaining them in a federal system. Nigerians, for the most part, especially the collectivists, still want Nigeria to operate the way it operated historical, in the regional system, or even before. What they don't want, what they really mean when they say federal Nigeria is indivisible, is that the allocations from former Southeast will remain shared. So technically, those who lost the war are a spoil of the war, because that's why only their own resources were shared nationally. And these guys are not even saying don't share it. It's okay, share the national resources. Let's be one country. But don't limit citizenship rights. For example, rights to vote and be voted for. Right to live wherever you want. You see, when you can't be up and down at the same time. You can't want, you can't enjoy the resources and deny them the equal citizenship status, or impose monarchical, oligarchical structures. You're trying to run a federal constitution, a common law, but at the same time, you're trying to impose traditional, customary, laws that operate in the region, which is okay. But those laws shouldn't affect federal rights, rights that come to people because they are part of the federalized system. I think that's where the problem is. Carrying over vestiges, relics, legacies of this old regional system of government, and trying to reinforce them in a federal structure. If you want Yorubas to stay in Yoruba land and have unequal privileges, okay, that's they have give them higher privileges in the West. Or if you want Hausas or Fulanis, or if you want people to remain in their regions and have regional privileges over others, admit that federal structure as we are practicing it is not going to work. Let's stop deceiving ourselves. And I find even this conversation about Nnamdi Kanu to fit into here, because if Nigeria were operating as regions, if Nnamdi Kanu runs into, does something wrong, he will go to his region and deal with it. And if you look at it very well, some of the things this young man is talking about are these things. He's seeing the unequal rights, unequal treatment of equals. If we are equal as a federal, as Nigerians, there won't be a problem. But there's a problem. Because again, as I talked about it, if Nigerians are trying to, the collectivists are fine because they are privileged by the war. They are privileged by numerical advantage that the imposition of state structure have given them. Because the way we count numbers now, 1 plus 1 equals 2 does not quite fit in, like if you're counting as we counted before the state's creation. So you created states in a way that favored the dominant region, the regions that won the war. And let's say it's a spoil of war, but we want you to admit that you are enjoying that spoil of war. You're still treating those who lost the war as your spoil of war. And these guys are mostly Christians. That's what we are saying. The only region in Nigeria that has close to 90% of Christians is the Southeast. It's the Southeast that is divided. It's the Southeast that's bearing the brunt. It's the Southeast that lost the war. It's the Southeast that hosted the war and lost it bitterly. It's the Southeast that's saying, accept us. Let us be one Nigeria. Don't tell me, don't demolish only houses that of my people like me. If there are laws that applies to everybody, then let the law apply equally to everybody. Not to no, the Igbos are different, the Hausas are different, the Hausas, the Yorubas, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. Okay, then the big fish is Sharia law. You cannot successfully, there's no African country I know of that have successfully integrated Sharia law and common law, customary. We are confused. You can't have a law for Muslims and a law for non-Muslims in the same country. And you say these laws, you've created states in a way that you consider, there's some line we say 12 majority states. You're giving yourself undue advantage. That's okay. But that's not okay. But remember, if you think about it, the Southeast does not have Muslims. So Muslims in the North do not even want to work with people in the Southeast. They can manage to work with people in the because they have their Muslim comrades, people who share their faith in the West. The Yorubas are essentially in the middle in almost everything. Okay? So they are in APC as they're in PDP, they are in that way. A mixed methods people. Okay, so religion as well is almost, I don't know what the statistics is, but you find Muslims in the Southwest much as you find Christians. And Christians in the Southwest will prefer to support Muslims in the North than Christians in the Southeast, as we have seen in some things, not right? So, or at least Muslims in the Southwest are happy to work with Christians in the Southwest. All right, and Christians in the Southwest are happy to work with Muslims in the Southwest, preferably more than they are interested in people from the Southeast. We'll see it again. And they may have their valid reasons. So I think that the first thing, and if I have opportunity to talk to America, for example, or to make an appeal, I would just be telling America that, listen, help us return back to regional structures. We're not saying don't break Nigeria if you don't have to. But in the meantime, to solve this problem, return people into their regions. These people don't think the same. They can't think the same. We never think the same. Especially because of their religious beliefs. And you can't take religion now away from the African. I'm telling you the truth. It's very hard to remove religious conventions or to minimize it. It is paramount. It defines everything. So the man who sees people of other religions as enemies of God, how much more? They are there. His enemy sees them as his enemy. They don't deserve life. They deserve to die or follow their own God. That's the problem. It affects every other thing. So I am saying today, and this is my invitation for everyone to consider, Nigeria is unable to function successfully and democratically if it operates any kind of religious law, and Sharia law is a big issue. Sharia law. Sharia law is saying, let's have a law for Muslims in the same country. But there's not a region for Muslims. Nigerians are Nigerians and they should live wherever they want. Every street in Nigeria, you will find a Christian Igbo, or at least an Igbo man. I don't know that the name of that street where you won't find them, except where they are not allowed to because of religious reasons as well. So if that's the case, how can you successfully run a country of citizens who will be patriotic, who will be treated equally when you have two constitutions? You see, for us to respect each other or one another, you can say, okay, since this is important to you, religion is a big issue for you. You want to have religious control. Have your own religion and region. When we come to the center, we can say this region are free to have their type of religion that they want to operate. So when you're going to that region, you know you're going to, it's more like you're going to a different country. Operating Sharia law concurrently within Nigeria, a multi-religious and secular state creates unequal citizenship, and it violates the country's constitutional guarantees of equality and religious freedom. The implementation of Sharia in certain northern states has been a source of intense conflict and discrimination, particularly for non-Muslims, not even just Muslims, for women, for young girls. You can't have a Nigeria where marrying underage girls is permissible. America, look at this. I mean, let the world think about it. If some people say it is okay for them to for underage girls to get married and have children give birth to children and raise children raised by children, what are you talking about? But if a group of people say that's a way of life that is okay for them, shouldn't they just be in their own area and have a different, so that others are free? Here are 10 reasons why I think concurrent Sharia law leads to unequal citizenship in Nigeria. Constitutional supremacy is undermined. Nigeria's constitution establishes the country as a secular state and is the supreme law of the land. The implementation of Sharia codes in some states in the north places religion above the federal constitution. No matter how technically how technical you want to be, do the language fight, but you can make the arguments. But the truth is that's the case. Proponents of Sharia law are insisting that Muslims should live by Sharia first and the Constitution second. This creates two different legal hierarchies for citizens depending on their location. You see, Sharia law is a source of discrimination. Number 2, religious discrimination in law enforcement. In states with Sharia law, enforcement agencies like the Hisbah, the Islamic police, exert pressure on non-Muslims to comply with Islamic rulings, despite claims that Sharia only applies to Muslims. Examples include the destruction of alcoholic beverages belonging to non-Muslims and raids on their businesses. The news is everywhere. The occurrences, incidents, reports of incidents related to destruction of alcoholic beverages are there. So you destroy other people's businesses because of your religious beliefs. And yet, when they pay tax, you benefit from the use of that taxation. Number 3, unequal legal testimony. Under Sharia law, the legal weight of a person's testimony can depend on their religion and gender. The testimony of a non-Muslim or a woman may be considered less reliable or valuable than that of a Muslim man. This severely limits a citizen's right to fair trial and legal representation. Number four, imposition of religious restrictions on all residents. Sharia implementing states have often imposed religious morality laws on their entire population, regardless of faith. This includes restricting the sale and consumption, again, of alcohol, a practice common for many Christians, violating their right to religious practice and personal freedom. Even atheists, those who don't believe in any religion, who just loves to drink alcohol, are denied their freedom to do so. Some risk death, killings, hatred. Number five, differential rights for women. Sharia penal codes have been criticized by human rights activists for adversely affecting women, including limiting their rights regarding divorce, rights regarding inheritance, rights related to child custody. Some interpretations of Sharia law have denied women equal rights and access to justice. Number six, violation of freedom of religion and conscience. The pressure to conform to Sharia law restricts the religious freedom of minority groups. For example, in states with Sharia law, Christians often face difficulties in acquiring land to build churches. The threat of blasphemy, accusations, and discriminations, punishments, all these things severely restricts the freedom of speech and expression and the freedom of religion. Number seven, cruel and degrading punishments. Sharia penal codes have led to severe and internationally condemned punishments such as amputation, flogging, degrading treatments, which are forbidden by the Nigerian Constitution and international human rights conventions. Number eight, persecution of non-religious citizens. Non-religious people, atheists, those who don't believe in God, including humanists and atheists, they are often treated as second-class citizens under the Sharia law. Outspoken atheists can be charged with blasphemy, and legal practices may treat them as criminals, simply for their lack of religious belief. Number nine, exploitation for political gain. The implementation of Sharia has been a point of political conflict, with critics arguing that it is used by politicians to appeal to religious sentiment and consolidate power. This manipulation can inflame sectarian tensions and divert attention from issues of corruption and poor governance. And that's why people say, it's our turn. And 4-4, people are not allowed to access internet, the sort of impact influences limits their ability to criticize corrupt public officials. Number 10, escalation of sectarian violence. The concurrent operation of Sharia has inflamed religious discussions in Nigeria, leading to deadly sectarian violence. Non-Muslim minorities in Sharia states and religiously diverse Middle Belt region, they have, look at Plateau for example, they have experienced heightened conflict and fear since the expansion of Sharia law in the 2000s. Sharia law makes equal citizens unequal. It makes more people, and this is the thing. This is the reason some people feel superior to others. That's why even law enforcement are afraid, sometimes, to arrest Muslims or arrest Fulanis, for example, when they engage in, that's why you see people carry, because it doesn't really surprise everybody in Nigeria that for some reason people are carrying guns They're not, carrying guns in a country that guns are outlawed. And moving on the streets, pretending to be what they are not, pretending to be herdsmen. Because sometimes even the profiting from the carols cannot afford the guns. They don't even own the cars. They are just. So I think that religious laws in Nigeria, traditional monarchical and oligarchical laws and privileges have helped polarize the country. America, please work with Britain, work with Nigeria to return back to regional systems. And if that's not possible, let those who want to live, let Biafra be. It is unfair to treat equals unequally. It's unfair for my child, because I am Igbo and Biafran and from the southeast, to have to score higher in JAM than non-Igbos. JAMB is the university admission exam. The bar is raised too high for Igbos, further frustrating us. So when we complain, we're coming from a place of trauma. And the trauma reminds us that we're exposed to. Our trauma triggers are before us every day. Our brains are under amygdala hijack. And that's why when we respond, for the most part, it is our unhealed souls, it's our traumatized voices that people hear. But look beyond what people call arrogance and just face the injustice that we have experienced. We are saying we can't be up and down at the same time. If we cannot equalize citizenship, then let's regionalize citizenship fully so that everybody gets a fair chance to be the best they can be and contribute not only to Africa, but to the global society. My name is Oke Welcome. This is my perspective. Thank you.